Dad, this banana is too big. I can't eat it all. Hello everyone, my name is Emma, now 24 years old. I live with my dad and am an orphan since I was very young. My mother left me due to a serious illness, leaving my dad and I to depend on each other. My childhood years passed in the love and devoted care of my dad. My dad is William. He was both a father and a mother, trying to make up for the shortcomings left by the loss of my mother. Life continued in a peaceful and familiar way, until one fateful day that changed everything. It all started when I turned 18, just entering university. That was a big turning point in my life, marking my maturity and stepping out into the wider world. I still clearly remember the feeling of bewilderment when I first left my beloved home, left the protective arms of my dad to face a new life full of challenges. I was just a simple girl at that time, never knowing the complexities of love or relationships. My soul was pure and full of desire to explore, ready to learn all the new things that university brought. In the early days, everything was new and exciting. I made friends with many people from all over, sharing memorable stories and memories. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the lecture hall and the noise of the dormitory, there were moments when I missed home terribly. Every time I thought of my father, my heart ached with an inexplicable longing. The image of him taking care of me, telling stories about my mother on peaceful evenings, his eyes always sad but full of love, kept appearing in my mind. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until that fateful day I could never forget. That was the moment that turned my life in a different direction, completely changing everything I knew. It was not only a turning point in adulthood, but also a great challenge to what I believed in. I was no longer the innocent girl who only knew joy and simple things. That day, I began my journey of facing complex emotions and situations that I was never prepared for. But here, I made friends who had just entered university like me. However, they were different from me. They were not simple girls like me. They knew how to go to bars, participate in exciting parties, and in general, they knew about boys and girls. We lived together in a small dormitory room in the school, sharing a cramped space, but full of laughter and endless stories. At first I knew nothing about those things, and remained shy and reserved with their world. However, as time passed, I began to feel myself gradually drawn into those activities. On weekend nights, our room was busier than ever. My friends put on makeup, chose their most beautiful dresses, and the vibrant music blared from their mobile phones. The excitement in their eyes made me curious, and gradually I was drawn in. The lively conversations about parties and new experiences made me feel like I didn't want to be left out. At first I joined with the intention of exploring, trying to experience something I had never known before. The first time I went to a bar with them, I clearly remember the feeling of excitement mixed with confusion when entering a space filled with flashing lights, loud music and bustling laughter. I stood next to them, sipping the cocktail my friend gave me, feeling the slight bitterness spreading in my mouth. Nights like that gradually became familiar. From being an observer, I joined the bustling atmosphere, holding hands with my friends and dancing in joy and endless laughter. I also learned how to drink from them. At first it was just small glasses, then it increased to drinking the whole glass without hesitation. I remember the late nights when we returned to the dormitory with laughter and wobbly legs, mouths constantly telling funny stories we had just experienced. That feeling of freedom and rebellion made me feel more alive than ever. No longer the innocent girl I was when I first entered university, I crossed a boundary that I never thought of. Then from the parties I gradually learned about love, something that was previously just a vague concept. One day at a classmate's birthday party, I met a new friend. His smile and eyes made my heart beat faster. For the first time I clearly felt the true vibration of love. Late at night we exchanged long messages, shared personal stories and dreams about the future. Love came to me in a surprising and enchanting moment. The first year of university life passed quickly in the vibrant and non-stop days. I realized that I had changed a lot since I entered here. From a shy girl, only knowing about the days of studying and simple dreams, I became a person who knew endless fun, knew the bitter taste of wine, and the passion of the music echoing in my heart. When the first year ended, we said goodbye to each other, each of us taking with us a little bit of our own memories and impressions. The dormitory became quieter as our roommates left, everyone returning home to enjoy the summer vacation. The strange feeling of emptiness without laughter, late night outings, or long stories in the dark made me realize how used to that lifestyle I was, and everything for me started when I returned home. When I just stepped into the house, I saw my father sitting watching TV. His eyes were focused on the screen, not realizing that I had returned. Seeing that scene, I had a mischievous idea to slowly approach and scare him to create a surprise. I gently walked step by step, trying not to make any noise, gradually approaching him. When my hand was about to touch my father's shoulder to scare him, he suddenly turned around, quickly grabbed my hand and pulled me into his embrace. "You came back without telling me," his voice rang out warmly. We both burst out laughing, surprise and joy filling the air. I looked at him, wondering how he knew I was approaching. When I asked, Dad pointed to the mirror that stood parallel to the TV. I turned around and saw the reason. That mirror had reflected my every move, letting him know my plan from the start. I burst out laughing, feeling both embarrassed and amused by this discovery. Dad laughed along, his eyes shining with the warmth and love that I had long been familiar with. After chatting and laughing for a while, I stood up and told Dad that I needed to get my suitcase and go back to my room. He nodded, still keeping a gentle smile on his face. I walked to the luggage area, feeling the peace and warmth of the house, a place that contained so many memories and the love that Dad had for me. The afternoon air was quiet but not boring, because Dad's presence made everything come alive. That evening my father and I sat down to eat dinner in the quiet space of the house. I began to talk about the memories, the days that had passed at school over the past year. We laughed together, shared funny stories. Sometimes he would smile dryly, looking at me with loving eyes. At this moment, I suddenly realized a truth: my father is now really handsome. Although he is nearly 50 years old, he still maintains the body of a young man. Perhaps because he loves to exercise, and the heavy daily work helps him maintain strong muscles. He only wore a tank top, revealing his bulging muscles. At that moment I noticed his beauty and strength with a strange look. At this moment I stared at him, my eyes hard to look away, and my train of thoughts suddenly became chaotic. Suddenly, my father's red voice woke me up from my thoughts. "What are you thinking?" I was startled, smiled slightly and shook my head. "No, I don't think anything." Father and son looked at each other, smiling. Father said, "You've only been to school for a year, but you've changed a lot." I nodded, smiling, and replied, "You're all grown up, Dad." That night, as I lay in bed, the image of my father's strong muscles appeared in my mind, making me feel confused. I never thought I would have such indelible thoughts about my father, but that image never left my mind even when I closed my eyes. The next day, the sweltering heat of noon was unbearable. Sitting in the living room, I felt like drops of sweat were running down my back, and no matter how hard I fanned with a hand fan, it was no use. Every gust of wind that blew by seemed to be instantly dissipated by the scorching heat. William, the man I couldn't stop secretly looking at every time he worked, had left home early in the morning to take care of business today, and only returned at noon. The suffocation lasted so long that I felt like every cell on my skin was about to burn. Unable to bear it any longer, I decided to step into the bathroom. The water flowed, cool and touching my skin, each drop of water hastily washing away the hot frustrations in my body, making me feel more comfortable. That feeling was so pleasant that I almost forgot everything around me, including closing the bathroom door. Each drop of cool water slid down my shoulders and back. Each wave of water seemed to gently caress, soothing the burning heat in my heart. I closed my eyes, letting that relaxation spread. The space seemed to be filled with only the sound of running water and my steady breathing. My thoughts drifted back to the times I stole glances at William from the window, watching him work intently, each movement sure, his eyes focused. Since entering university, something in me had changed. The admiration I had for him gradually transformed into an intense emotion that was hard to name. But then, a strange feeling suddenly came over me, causing me to open my eyes. The feeling that someone was standing there watching intently. I turned my head and froze when I met William's eyes. He had returned at some point and was standing at the door, his gaze fixed on me through the gap of the half-closed door. His eyes did not blink, his face was frozen in an indescribable expression, a mixture of surprise and something I could not put into words. My heart was pounding in my chest, my legs were stiff and unable to move. My breathing became intermittent. A tense silence filled the space, only the sound of running water remained. Each second seemed to stretch out endlessly, and in that moment, we both knew we had crossed a certain boundary. The silence was suddenly broken when I spoke, my voice trembling. "Dad, you're back." William was startled, as if he had just been awakened from a dream. His eyes sparkled with obvious confusion. He blinked repeatedly, looking around as if searching for an excuse for his presence. His hand tightened on his bag, the strap shaking slightly with the rhythm of his hand. I'm sorry, I didn't think." His voice was hoarse and broken. His eyes looked away, but he couldn't hide the red on his cheeks. We both stood like that, despite the stuffy space around us, the sound of water still trickling like a joke, reminding us that we were standing on the edge of taboo. I clenched my hands, feeling the coolness of each drop of water falling to the floor, trying to suppress the vague emotions that were rising. A light breeze blew through the half-open window, making me shiver involuntarily. This feeling was both embarrassing and unbearable. He looked at me once more, his eyes meeting mine like an unspoken confession, then turned and hurried back to the living room. The space returned to silence, but my heart was still pounding, mixed with confusion and chaotic thoughts. After a while, I stepped out of the bathroom with a towel wrapped around me, the water still glistening on my damp skin. The misty steam in the room drifted out, mixing with the hot air of that sultry afternoon. When I walked into the living room, my heart pounded in my chest when I saw William sitting there, his shirt clinging to his body, drenched in sweat. His eyes met mine for a moment, red and quickly averted, as if looking straight at me was impossible. No longer the innocent girl I had been, I suddenly felt an irresistible boldness. I smiled, walking closer to him, each step heavy with desire. Sitting down right next to him, the distance between us was so close that his breath fanned my cheek. "Did you see everything just now?" I whispered with a half-smile, as if this was just a trivial story. William stiffened, his brown eyes glowing in the living room light, red as fire. His face stretched, shy and awkward. He faltered, trying to find the words, unsuccessfully. Dad, it's not," he mumbled, his hands clenching the front of his shirt, trying to hide the rising tension. Our eyes met again, and I saw the struggle there, the struggle between reason and emotion. "Don't avoid me," I said softly, my eyes not leaving his. For a long moment, the space between us seemed frozen. He swallowed, his dry lips moving to say something, then stopped. We both knew the line between right and wrong was becoming blurred. William took a deep breath, his hands shaking slightly as they rested on my shoulders. "This won't do," he said, his voice low, more to himself than to me. But I didn't let him stop. A strange, powerful feeling spread through my body. His eyes looked at me hesitantly, but there was no clear sign of rejection. I couldn't help myself. My hands reached up and cupped William's face. I pulled him closer, placing a kiss on William's trembling lips. The surprise made him stiffen, but not for long. After a moment, I felt his lips respond, soft but passionate. Our breaths mingled, and I knew that the invisible bond between us had dissolved. William no longer hesitated. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into his embrace with such force that I could feel his heartbeat. The world outside faded away, leaving only us and the sensations of the present. I felt each pounding heartbeat, each surge of heat, as William ran his hands through my wet hair. "I shouldn't have," he whispered one last time, but his voice was drowned by emotion. I didn't reply, just looked deep into his eyes, where the light of surrender shone. A second later, we were both immersed in a longer, more passionate kiss, all inhibitions and reasons swept away forever. From that moment on, all boundaries between him and me were erased. We rushed into each other without any hesitation, as if the outside world no longer existed. In the following days, the house became our private space, where all fears and reservations disappeared. Every time he entered the room, his burning eyes made my heart beat faster. I clearly felt every rapid breath, every strong movement he gave, as if he wanted to engrave his image into me. At first, the feeling of nervousness and fear of being discovered still crept in, but gradually the passion erased all worries. We lived in a crazy passion. Each meeting was a time to immerse ourselves in inseparable emotions. He knew how to make me forget everything, bringing me to the peak of pleasure that I had never experienced. The house seemed to light up, no longer a quiet place, but a place that witnessed the most intense, passionate moments between us. Days passed by. Every afternoon when the gentle sunlight filtered through the window, I sat waiting for him to come home. Every sense in me was awakened when I heard his footsteps. The feeling of anticipation made my heart flutter. We didn't just meet in the dark in the mornings together. Our eyes met meaningfully. I knew I was deeply in love and couldn't turn back. We continued like that, holding each other tightly through every moment until I finished college, as if time had stopped, leaving only the two of us to share the burning secrets in that house. And now, I don't know if I can go back to the way things were. The life I once knew, once considered peaceful, was swept away by this fascinating relationship. I felt like a person lost in the chaos of emotions and memories, no longer knowing what was right, what was wrong. Looking back, I wonder if I can ever regain the innocence and simplicity of those days, or if the scars of those days will forever follow me. Here is my advice to everyone: don't fall for the temptations that can come into your life from anywhere and anyone. Moments of impulsiveness may bring you fleeting joy, but the price you pay may be your peace of mind and your future. When you are faced with a crossroads between reason and emotion, ask yourself if it is worth trading the important values you have built. Cherish what you have and think carefully before committing to something that may lead to regret. Don't let short-term moments overshadow the long-term future. Intense emotions can easily make us forget the long-term consequences. The sustainability of relationships is built on trust, loyalty, and sincerity. Every decision has consequences, and the nagging conscience is the hardest to heal. Think about the people around you, the people who love you, and yourself. Don't trade your peace of mind for a moment of impulsiveness. Emotions are beautiful things, but they can easily lead you astray if not controlled. Be clear-headed and strong in every decision you make.